These, all of Israel stood. That was the foundation for life of the Jews and the people of Israel. Very much as Trinidad and Tobago in 1962, as we celebrate 50 years of independence, and our constitution to govern and guide this land. Now that was all well and good. However, you know, this was like bright people who believe that they could interpret, they could define, they could specify for us and for you. So for example, you're a person walking on the right hand side of the road when you come out together, and all of a sudden somebody comes in the street and they tell you, you see that? That is danger. You must cross the road and move on the left hand side when you leave it. Always that is bright people around feel they know exactly what to do, how things should be done. So similar to the Jews, in the 1st and 4th centuries, arose a group of bright people, quote unquote bright people, and they were called the ancients, or as in Jesus' time, they became known as the scribes and Pharisees. And they are the ones who went about translating, interpreting, defining, making specific the law which heralded and on which the nation of Israel was founded. That is, as I referred to before, the Ten Commandments and what is found in the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, or the Torah. So these were the scribes and Pharisees, or they were called the ancients. So when reference is made to the elders in Jesus' saying in the Gospel, these are the men Jesus referred to, originating out of the 5th and 4th centuries, who defined, extracted, set in place their interpretation of the law of Israel. With that, of course, came their divergence from the original intention of the law. And in their definition and extraction of the law, they indeed made life so difficult that Jesus had to put a stop to it and Paul agreed with them. So, our textual statement, you leave the commandments of God and hold fast to the traditions of men. The traditions of men that Jesus is speaking about is these definitions, these extractions, these interpretations of the law that had taken root and became pervasive in the life and existence of the nation of Israel. So, this thing about the disciples eating with their hands unwashed, their hands defiled, is just one example of their interpretation and extraction of the law. For this hand washing had nothing to do with hygiene, but it had to do with the ceremonial relationship between eating and serving God, which was developed by the ancients. So they had a particular way, which was the correct way, the correct ceremonial way to wash the hands. And I wouldn't go into that because these are things you can go on the internet and read for yourself. Because these oral laws, as they were, they only became written in the 3rd century AD, and they're known as the Mishnah. So you can type that in and you can go and read that yourself. You can It's the same later on in the Gospel passage with the washing of cups and pots and vessels of bronze. Because when we go to Leviticus chapter 11, which again in the old time you can read, you will read about what makes a vessel unclean and what makes it clean. So if a Gentile, a non-Jewish person, touched a clay vessel, that was alright, because it was unclean on the outside, but it was filled with water and everything, because the inside was clean. However, If it had a piece of metal in it, the metal became unclean and you had to purify it by certain means and all that. These were the interpretations and specifications coming out from the ancients, the elders, the scribes, and Pharisees. And if you think far enough, you realize it sounds just like the lawyers, the constitutional lawyers of Trinidad and Tobago. We wouldn't speak about that today, but another time we would focus on how in every society, in good time, the law becomes irrelevant to the needs of the people, thanks to these quote-unquote bright lawyers we have in the place. I never said we should only the children go and study law. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's a fact of life. Just what we see happen in Jesus' time is what happens in every society, and will happen in every society as people quote-unquote claim development. So, Jesus had to condemn these ancients, these scribes and Pharisees, because in the oral tradition, their definition, their extraction, their case law and precedents upon which they based everything was no longer relevant to the religion of Israel, was no longer relevant to the worship of God as it was known. So in Matthew chapter 23, that's when we have time, look at Matthew 23, and in many cases where Jesus had to condemn the scribes and Pharisees, the ancients whom we are speaking about today. So many war against them, war against scribes and Pharisees, war against whoever, because they made the law such a burden to put other persons and they themselves would not lift a finger to help to ease and carry that burden. So the great revolution by Jesus in saying there is nothing outside a man's life within him can defile him, but it is out what comes out of that man which defiles him. And he went on to explain that whatever you eat is perfect, because it, strictly speaking, does not affect the body, because it passes out of the body, but it's what comes out of it. What comes out of it comes from the heart. That is what defines you. So that's the background. And for us today, straight, short and to the point, we are to be careful that the quote-unquote new scribes and Pharisees, this one I want to happen this morning, we have to be very careful that the quote-unquote new scribes and Pharisees, you know, all these persons who know what is good for you, who know what is right in religion, who know what is right in the country, who know what is right in the world, we are to be careful and we are to consider the statements of these new scribes and Pharisees, the new ancients, as they issue their utterances for us in terms of the way we live and how we conduct our affairs. For in our Christian context, in our present scenario, we have the word of Jesus in Mark chapter 12 as well as in Matthew 23 as to what guides our life. Mark chapter 12 verse 28, and I quote, "And one of the scribes came up to him and heard him disputing, and seeing that he answered, asked him, Which commandment is the first of all? Jesus answered, The first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." This is what is offered has been offered to the new community, the new Israel, and in Jesus' death and resurrection, what has been offered to Christianity. So this is all about me, that we should love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength. And likewise, we must love our neighbor as ourselves. That is all. According to Pharaoh, that is all, that is all, that is all. We need nothing further. But what we have to contend with in this modern age are the new ancients, the new scribes and Pharisees, who seek to interpret this law of God for Christianity, for the new Israel, for all of mankind, and put their own spin on it. Because all that is required for us as Christians is that we make God priority in our life. That's it. Make God the priority, the ultimate, the first response, the first responder, the first cause in our life. That is what our God calls on us to do. And it's totally not called. It follows naturally that we make the institution of God the first response, the first call, the first responder in our life. And we demonstrate that prioritization of God by our response to each other. That's what it means by loving the neighbor as yourself. That is what we are called. But we have the new ancient, the new scribes and Pharisees in our life and in our situation. And what do they tell us? They say, forget about this thing about loving the neighbor as yourself and about prioritizing where God and the institution of God, known as the church, is concerned. The new scribes and Pharisees say to us that we must live selfishly, that we must see out yourself and forget the rest. Isn't that true? Yes. So if you are jobs passing, make sure your wife gets, your cousin gets, your children, your auntie, and forget the rest. This thing about people in need and people needing a break, forget them. That is what the new scribes and Pharisees say to us, the new ancient. But in no way is that consistent with having God as priority and then loving your neighbor as yourself. Because in the same way, we would want to give ourselves an opportunity in life. We must also want to give somebody else an opportunity. That's what life is all about. That is the call of our God in Jesus Christ. But we have the new ancient, the new scribes and Pharisees to put up with. So we haven't seen a child in church for a while, and you know you have the parents or the guardians. What about so and so? I tell them, oh, the child, she had lessons on Sunday morning. Well, you have to forgive me.